The morning began like any other for her, with the persistent sound of her alarm clock piercing through the quiet of her small apartment. She rubbed her eyes and tried to shake off the lingering weight of exhaustion that seemed to settle over her every night. Being a single mother was hard, much harder than she had ever imagined. She had dreamed of a life filled with love and security, but instead she found herself juggling multiple jobs, trying to make ends meet and carrying the heavy burden of responsibility for a small, delicate life that depended entirely on her. She rose from the bed, careful not to wake her child who was still sleeping peacefully. There was a soft morning light filtering through the thin curtains, painting the room with gentle strokes of gold. The apartment was modest, cluttered with toys and a few scattered books, a testament to the life she was struggling to build. She moved quietly, performing the morning ritual of preparing breakfast, packing lunches, and ensuring that everything was ready for the day ahead. Each task felt like a small victory, but also a reminder of the relentless routine that defined her life. By the time they were both ready, the clock was already ticking faster than she had hoped. She grabbed her coat, her bag, and her child's hand, stepping out into the crisp morning air. The city was alive with movement, people rushing in all directions, each carrying their own burdens and stories. She blended into the crowd, invisible in the rush of life, but carrying a storm of her own worries beneath her calm exterior. Her first stop was the airport. She had managed to secure a flight that would take them to a new opportunity, a chance for her to work on a temporary project that promised a little extra income. Every dollar counted, and she could not afford to miss this chance. She navigated through the busy terminal, pushing a small trolley and holding her child's hand tightly. Her mind was occupied with a list of tasks, checking in, security procedures, keeping an eye on her child, and most importantly, making sure they didn't miss the flight. Each step was calculated, each decision measured, as if the weight of their lives depended on her careful planning. As they moved through the crowd, she caught herself watching families who seemed to have it all together, couples laughing, parents walking hand in hand with children, the ease of their movements, the comfort of shared responsibilities. She felt a pang of longing, a quiet ache for something she had once dreamed of but had lost along the way. Life had not been kind, and yet she kept moving forward, driven by the love for her child and the hope that one day things would change. Her mind wandered to memories she had kept tucked away for years. Memories of a first love, a boy she had known long ago, the boy who had once made her heart race and filled her teenage dreams with possibilities. They had been inseparable at one point, sharing laughter, secrets, and the kind of innocent love that felt eternal. But life had taken them in different directions and they had lost touch. She had often wondered where he had gone, what he had become, and whether he ever thought of her. Those thoughts were bittersweet, a mixture of nostalgia and melancholy that she carried quietly, never allowing it to cloud the reality of her present struggles. The airport was bustling, the sounds of rolling suitcases, announcements, and conversations creating a symphony of organized chaos. She maneuvered through the crowd with practiced ease, her eyes scanning for signs, gates, and counters. Her child tugged at her hand, pointing at a brightly colored toy in a shop window, and she smiled, bending down to lift them up so they could see. In that moment, she felt a fleeting sense of normalcy, a small reprieve from the weight of her responsibilities. But it was brief as the reality of their tight schedule returned, pulling her back into focus. She checked the departure screens, confirming their gate and departure time, and took a deep breath. This flight was crucial, not just for the work opportunity but for the possibility of a slightly easier life, even if just for a little while. She reminded herself to stay calm, to be patient, and to handle whatever obstacles came their way. Life had a way of testing her resilience, and she had learned, sometimes painfully, that she needed to meet each challenge head-on without complaint, and with unwavering determination. As they approached the security checkpoint, she placed her belongings in the trays, helping her child do the same. The routine was familiar, almost automatic, yet each time she went through it, she felt a surge of anxiety. Airports, with their crowds and strict procedures, had a way of magnifying her fears and insecurities. She kept her focus on her child, on the steps they needed to take, on the goal of reaching the gate safely and on time. She moved with a quiet urgency, her mind a whirlwind of calculations and contingency plans. After clearing security, she allowed herself a brief moment to rest. They found a small seating area near their gate, and she sat down, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. Her child leaned against her, tired but curious, and she stroked their hair, feeling the soft weight of responsibility and love settle over her. It was moments like these that reminded her of why she persevered, why she continued to fight against the odds. Her life was far from perfect, but her child's smile, their laughter, and their presence were more valuable than anything else. She glanced around the terminal, her eyes scanning the faces of travelers, each carrying their own stories and secrets. That's when she saw him. At first, it was just a flicker, a sense of familiarity that caught her off guard. She turned slightly, trying to see more clearly, and then her heart skipped a beat. There he was, standing with a calm confidence, dressed neatly, and carrying an aura of ease that seemed so familiar yet somehow different. Her first love, the boy from her past, the one who had left an indelible mark on her heart, was right there in front of her. Time seemed to slow for a moment as memories came flooding back. She remembered the way he had smiled at her, the laughter they shared, the dreams they once had. Her heart raced, a mixture of excitement, nervousness, and disbelief. She wanted to approach him, to speak, to bridge the years that had passed, but uncertainty held her back. Life had changed both of them, she realized, and she didn't know how he would react. The thought of rejection, of awkwardness, of seeing a stranger in the place of the boy she had loved, made her hesitate. She watched him from a distance, noticing subtle details, the way he carried himself, the ease of his movements, the faint smile that hinted at confidence and contentment. There was a sophistication about him, a quiet power that she hadn't expected. She wondered what he had become, what his life was like, and whether he had ever thought of her. The questions swirled in her mind, mixing with the memories of youth and the realities of her present struggles. Her child, unaware of the emotional storm raging within her, tugged at her hand and asked a simple question about their upcoming flight. She smiled, pushing the thoughts aside, focusing on the moment, on the practicalities of travel, on the task at hand. But her mind kept returning to him, to the sight of his familiar face and to the curiosity about the person he had become. She knew she had a choice. She could walk away, continue with her life as it was, or she could take a chance and reconnect with the past, risking disappointment but opening the door to possibilities she had never imagined. As the boarding announcement echoed through the terminal, she felt a mixture of anticipation and hesitation. The day had started like any other, filled with routine, responsibility, and struggle. But now, with the unexpected sight of her first love, it carried the spark of something new, something that could change the course of her day, her life, or perhaps even her future. She took a deep breath, holding her child close, and prepared to step onto the plane, carrying with her the quiet hope that life might just have a surprise waiting, even for someone who had long thought that their dreams were out of reach. The plane touched down smoothly, the engines humming a soft lullaby as it rolled toward the gate. She held her child's hand tightly, feeling the familiar mixture of relief and fatigue that always came at the end of a flight. Traveling was never easy, but she had learned to manage it with a careful rhythm, a series of steps that allowed her to stay in control even when life seemed chaotic. She gathered her belongings, hoisting her bag over her shoulder, and stepped down the aisle, her eyes scanning the faces around her. The world felt larger here, unfamiliar yet full of possibilities, and she moved with a quiet purpose, determined to navigate it successfully. Once they were outside the airport, the noise of traffic and the movement of travelers hit her in waves. She adjusted her child's coat, making sure they were comfortable, and led the way to the small taxi stand. Her mind raced with plans and calculations. She had to get to the temporary apartment she had rented, unpack and prepare for the project she was about to start. Every minute counted, every step mattered, and yet a strange distraction lingered at the back of her mind. She couldn't shake the memory of the man she had seen at the previous airport, the first love she had never forgotten. The thought of him brought an unexpected warmth and curiosity, even in the midst of her exhaustion. The taxi ride was quiet, the city passing by in a blur of colors and sounds. Her child dozed lightly against her shoulder, tired from the travel, and she found herself relaxing for the first time that day. The temporary apartment was modest but clean, a small sanctuary where they could settle for a few weeks. She unpacked quickly, organizing the essentials first: clothes, toiletries, and the few personal items that made the space feel like home. She wanted to create a little sense of normalcy, a place where her child could feel safe and cared for. even if only for a short time. After setting things in order, she allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. Sitting by the window, she watched the city move below. People hurrying along sidewalks, cars weaving through traffic, lives unfolding in ways she could only imagine. And yet, her thoughts kept returning to him. She tried to push the memory aside, reminding herself that it had been years since they had last seen each other, that their lives were probably completely different now. But the image of his face, the familiarity of his smile, and the curiosity about the person he had become clung to her mind like a shadow. The next morning, she left early to begin her project. The work was demanding, but she approached it with a quiet determination. She found herself pouring everything she had into it, determined to succeed, to earn enough to make life a little easier, if only temporarily. Her child was at a nearby daycare, and she had arranged a careful routine that allowed her to focus on work while ensuring her child was safe and cared for. Every day was a delicate balance, a careful act of managing time, energy, and resources. Yet, despite the exhaustion, she felt a spark of hope, a quiet belief that things could get better, that life could hold surprises even for someone like her. One afternoon, during a brief lunch break, she decided to step outside for a walk. The city streets were busy, filled with the sounds of life. Vendors calling out their wares, cars honking, the laughter of children playing in small parks. She moved slowly, enjoying the rare moment of solitude, her mind wandering as she thought about the past and the dreams she had once held. It was then, as she crossed a small plaza, that she saw him again. He was standing near a cafe, talking to someone, and the world seemed to shift around her. Her heart skipped a beat, the same mixture of excitement, nervousness, and disbelief flooding her senses. He looked up briefly, and for a moment their eyes met. Time seemed to pause, and the memories of their youth, the laughter, the shared secrets, and the innocent dreams came rushing back. She froze, unsure whether to approach him or retreat. The years had changed them both, and she felt the weight of her current life pressing against her. She wondered what he had become, what paths he had taken, and whether he would recognize her. She remembered the boy she had loved, the one who had seemed so kind and full of promise, and she questioned whether he was still that person, or whether life had shaped him into someone she would no longer know. Despite her hesitation, curiosity won. She took a deep breath and moved closer, her steps tentative, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. As she neared, he turned, his expression shifting from casual attention to surprise and then recognition. There was a moment of silence, a pause in the bustling plaza, as if the world itself had acknowledged their meeting. He smiled, the same familiar warmth she remembered, though it carried a maturity and confidence she had not seen before. They exchanged greetings, awkward at first, but slowly easing into a conversation that felt both natural and strange. They spoke about where they had been, what had happened in the years since they last met, and the twists and turns of life that had shaped them both. She was careful not to reveal too much about her struggles, keeping the details of her daily hardships private, but she allowed herself to share enough to reconnect, to bridge the gap of time that had separated them. As they talked, she noticed the subtle indications of his current life. His attire was immaculate, his watch and accessories suggesting success, and there was a quiet confidence in the way he carried himself. She caught glimpses of assistants moving discreetly nearby, the soft murmur of conversations about meetings and business deals. It was clear that his life was very different from hers, yet he treated her with genuine interest and attention, as if the years and differences mattered little in the face of their shared past. Her heart was conflicted. Part of her was thrilled, captivated by the sight of him, by the ease with which they could still connect. Another part was wary, afraid that her current circumstances might create a barrier between them, that the reality of her struggles might make her unworthy in his eyes. Yet there was a quiet hope growing inside her, a sense that life could be kinder than she had expected, that sometimes the past had a way of circling back, offering second chances in ways she had never imagined. They decided to sit at a small cafe, away from the crowded plaza, and continue their conversation over coffee. The initial awkwardness faded as they reminisced about old times, laughing at shared memories and gently teasing each other about youthful mistakes. It was a rare moment of joy and lightness in her otherwise heavy life, and she allowed herself to savor it, to feel the warmth of connection and the thrill of being seen and remembered by someone who had once meant so much. As the afternoon wore on, she found herself opening up more, sharing glimpses of her life, her child, and the challenges she faced. He listened attentively, offering kind words and gentle encouragement, never judgmental, never dismissive. There was a sincerity in his eyes, a recognition of her strength and resilience, and it made her feel valued in a way she had not experienced for a long time. She realized that the boy she had loved had grown into a man who still possessed the kindness and attentiveness that had drawn her to him in the first place. When it was time to leave, they exchanged numbers, promising to stay in touch. Her heart was light, yet tinged with curiosity and wonder about what the future might hold. She returned to her temporary apartment, her mind racing with thoughts of the encounter, the possibilities it presented, and the subtle changes in her own heart. Life had a way of surprising her, reminding her that even amidst struggle and hardship, moments of joy and connection could emerge unexpectedly, offering hope and a renewed sense of purpose. The days that followed felt like a delicate balance between hope and caution. She returned to her work with renewed energy, carrying the memory of their meeting like a small spark that warmed her amidst the cold routines of her life. Each morning she would wake early, manage her child's needs, and head out with a determined stride. Yet, even in the midst of this daily grind, her thoughts often drifted to him. She wondered what he was doing, whether he thought of their meeting as much as she did, and whether life had changed him in ways she could not yet understand. It was during a brief pause at work that her phone buzzed, a message that made her heart race. It was him. He wanted to meet for coffee to catch up properly and talk more about the years that had passed. She hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to accept, afraid of exposing too much of herself, of letting her vulnerability show. But curiosity won, and she agreed, sensing that this encounter might hold something special. A chance to reconnect with a part of her past she had long cherished. The coffee shop was cozy, tucked away from the busy streets, offering a quiet refuge where they could talk without interruption. When she arrived, he was already there, a smile spreading across his face as he saw her. The years had brought maturity, but the familiarity of his presence immediately transported her back to the days when life had seemed simpler, when their hearts had been full of dreams and possibilities. He greeted her warmly and they sat down, the conversation flowing naturally despite the years of separation. They spoke of their childhoods, their families, and the unexpected paths life had taken them on. She listened as he shared stories of his work, of the responsibilities he had taken on, and the successes and failures that had shaped him. There was a quiet pride in his voice, but also humility, a recognition that life's journey was never straightforward. She found herself opening up as well, sharing anecdotes from her days, the joys and struggles of raising her child, and the challenges of making ends meet. He listened attentively, his eyes reflecting understanding and empathy, making her feel heard in a way she had rarely experienced in recent years. As the conversation deepened, she began to notice the subtler details of his life, the watch he wore, the precision of his attire, and the quiet confidence in his movements hinted at a life far different from her own. Yet he never flaunted his success, never made her feel lesser. Instead, he focused on the connection between them, the shared history that still lingered despite the years. She realized that he had grown into a man who valued sincerity over appearances, someone who could see her strength and resilience without judgment. Their conversation naturally shifted to memories of their youth. They laughed at the mistakes they had made, the innocent misunderstandings, and the dreams they had once held. For a moment it felt as if no time had passed and the bond that had existed between them was rekindled with a gentle warmth. She felt a sense of joy she had not experienced in a long time, a reminder that life could still hold moments of unexpected happiness, even amidst hardship. As the hours passed, she began to feel more comfortable, more willing to let him see the reality of her life. She spoke of the sacrifices she had made, the sleepless nights and the constant juggling of responsibilities. He listened without interruption, offering support and encouragement, never pity, never condescension. She felt a growing trust, a sense that he respected her for who she was and not just for the past they had shared. He shared glimpses of his world, carefully, without overwhelming her. She began to sense the extent of his success, though he did not announce it outright. There were hints of wealth in the way he described his work, the casual mention of travel and the subtle details of his lifestyle. She was intrigued, curious, but also cautious, not wanting to let assumptions cloud the connection they were building. There was a gentle tension, a sense that something significant was being withheld, something that might change her perspective entirely when revealed. During one quiet moment, they walked through a nearby park, watching children play and couples stroll hand in hand. She felt a mixture of emotions, happiness at the moment, nostalgia for their shared past, and a faint anxiety about the unknown. She wondered how their lives might intersect moving forward, whether the bond they had rekindled could survive the realities of their different worlds. Yet despite the uncertainty, there was a warmth that made her heart lighter, a sense that she was being given a rare gift, a chance to reconnect with someone who had once meant so much to her. As the day turned into evening, they found themselves sitting on a bench watching the sun dip below the horizon. The city lights began to twinkle, casting a soft glow over the streets. She felt a quiet sense of peace, a rare moment of calm in her otherwise hectic life. They spoke less now, allowing the silence to speak for itself, comfortable in each other's presence. She realized that this moment, simple and unassuming, was as precious as any grand gesture, a reminder that connection and understanding could be found in the smallest interactions. When it was time to part, they exchanged a long look, both aware that something meaningful had begun to bloom. He walked her to her temporary apartment, helping her carry the few things she had brought along. She felt a flutter of hope, a sense that this encounter could be the beginning of something new, something that might change the course of her life. They said their goodbyes with a promise to meet again, a gentle reassurance that the connection they had rekindled was not fleeting. In the quiet of her apartment, after her child had gone to sleep, she reflected on the day. She felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension, wondering what the future might hold and how their lives would intertwine moving forward. The encounter had stirred memories, emotions, and possibilities she had long thought were lost. She realized that life could be unpredictable, offering moments of joy and connection even when one least expected them. And for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to dream, to imagine that perhaps, just perhaps, life might offer her more than struggle, that it could bring unexpected happiness and a chance to reconnect with a love she had never forgotten. The following days were filled with a new kind of tension, one that carried both excitement and uncertainty. She had returned to her routine, managing her work and child, yet her thoughts kept drifting back to him. Every notification on her phone made her heart skip a beat, hoping it was a message from him. And often it was. He sent small notes checking how she was, asking about her day and sharing lighthearted thoughts that made her smile in ways she hadn't done for years. It was a delicate dance, reconnecting with someone from the past while trying to keep her life stable and grounded. One afternoon, he suggested they meet again, this time at a quiet little park cafe he had found. She hesitated initially, worried about her messy apartment, her simple wardrobe, and the smallness of her life in comparison to what she imagined his world to be. But she reminded herself that this was about the person he had always been, not what he had become. With a mix of excitement and nerves, she agreed, and they set a time for the afternoon. The cafe was tucked away from the main street, with trees swaying gently in the breeze and the distant laughter of children playing. She arrived slightly early, her heart pounding, and took a deep breath to calm herself. When he arrived, he smiled in that familiar way, the same warmth she had remembered from years ago, yet now infused with a quiet confidence and poise. His presence was reassuring, yet it stirred feelings she had long buried, emotions that reminded her of youth, love, and the bittersweet passage of time. They started with small talk, sharing updates about the city, her work, and her child, but soon the conversation deepened, delving into their personal journeys over the years. He listened intently as she spoke about the challenges of being a single mother, the sleepless nights, the financial struggles, and the constant balancing act that defined her life. She expected sympathy or judgment, but he offered neither. Instead, he responded with respect, admiration for her resilience, and an understanding that felt almost profound. His words were a balm to her weary heart, a reminder that someone could see her strength without questioning her choices. As the conversation flowed, she began to notice more about him, subtle signs of the life he now led. The way he spoke about his work hinted at high stakes and significant responsibility. There were mentions of meetings, travel, and decisions that affected many people. Yet he never boasted or flaunted his achievements. Instead, he spoke with humility, focusing on meaningful conversations and genuine connections. She felt a mix of awe and curiosity, sensing that his life was far different from hers, yet appreciating that he made her feel comfortable, equal, and respected. Their talks often circled back to their past, reminiscing about moments that had shaped them. They laughed over school memories, childhood mischief, and dreams that had once seemed so big yet so simple. She marveled at how easy it was to slip back into that familiar connection, how effortless it felt to talk with him, despite the years that had passed. There was a magic in the way they communicated, a silent understanding that bridged the gap of time and distance, and it left her both enchanted and reflective. She began to share more personal moments, telling him about her child, the joys and fears of raising them alone, and the sacrifices she had made. He listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions, showing a sincere desire to understand her life. She felt seen in a way she hadn't for a long time, as though the hardships she bore were acknowledged not as burdens, but as testament to her strength. His presence was comforting, a rare mix of familiarity and newness that made her heart both hopeful and cautious. Over the next few meetings, they spent more time together, exploring the city, visiting quiet parks, and enjoying simple meals. She noticed how effortlessly he fit into her world, never judging, never expecting her to change, yet hinting at a life of privilege that she could only imagine. There was an undercurrent of mystery, subtle cues that suggested his life was not ordinary, that the man she once knew had grown into someone extraordinary. She sensed the depth of his success in small ways, the careful choices of words, the attention to detail in his attire, the confidence with which he navigated public spaces, but he never flaunted it. It was only a hint, enough to spark curiosity, leaving her wondering what more lay beneath the surface. Her feelings became more complex with each encounter. She felt joy, nostalgia, and a gentle thrill at seeing him again, yet also a quiet anxiety about their different worlds. She worried that the gap between them, the years and the circumstances, might be too vast. But at the same time, she felt a growing trust and a rare comfort, as if the bond they shared had endured the test of time. There was a subtle understanding between them, an unspoken acknowledgement that despite the years and the paths life had taken, their connection remained intact. One evening, after a long day, he invited her to a quiet dinner at a small restaurant. Not lavish, but intimate and warm. The candlelight flickered, casting soft shadows, and for the first time she allowed herself to relax fully, to feel the depth of emotion stirring within her. They spoke about dreams, regrets, and hopes for the future. He encouraged her to pursue her aspirations, to recognize the strength she often overlooked in herself. She felt a mix of gratitude, admiration, and something tender growing in her heart, a feeling that reminded her of why she had loved him in the first place. Yet, the questions lingered. She wanted to know more about the life he now led, the responsibilities, the successes, and the choices that had shaped him. But he was careful, revealing just enough to pique her curiosity without overwhelming her, creating a sense of anticipation that made their interactions all the more captivating. She found herself drawn to the mystery, wanting to understand him fully while cherishing the gradual, patient unfolding of their renewed connection. Their bond grew stronger over time, each meeting weaving a tapestry of memories, conversations, and quiet moments that felt deeply personal. She began to notice how he adjusted to her life, seamlessly integrating into her routine, showing consideration for her child, and respecting her boundaries. It was a rare combination of familiarity and admiration, a delicate balance that made her heart both hopeful and cautious. She realized that what they were building was more than nostalgia. It was a renewed connection, one that had the potential to grow into something meaningful, despite the differences in their circumstances. As the days passed, she felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. Every encounter left her heart lighter yet filled with questions. She wondered how the truth of his life, the full extent of his success, would change her perception and their connection. She imagined the moment of revelation, the point at which the gap between their worlds would become clear, and she felt a blend of excitement and apprehension. Yet even with the uncertainty, there was a deep, growing sense of hope that life had offered her a second chance, a rare opportunity to reconnect with someone who had always held a special place in her heart. The morning air was crisp as she stepped outside, her child holding her hand with sleepy eyes that reflected trust and innocence. Today felt different, though she couldn't quite put a finger on why. There was a quiet anticipation, a flutter in her chest that she had not felt in years. She had been building her days around work, care, and the small routines that kept her life in order. But now, amidst the familiar motions, something new had begun to unfold. She could feel it in her steps, in the soft warmth of the sunlight, in the little sighs of the city around her. He had called the night before with a plan for the day. He wanted to take her to a place he said was special, a part of the city she had never seen, and she agreed without hesitation, curious and eager to discover what he had in mind. She dressed simply, her usual understated style, careful but relaxed. She wanted to look presentable, yet she did not want to overthink the encounter. There was a calmness in her preparation, a quiet acceptance that today could mark a turning point in their renewed connection. When he arrived, his smile was warm and reassuring, familiar yet somehow more mature, carrying the quiet assurance of a man who had faced life and emerged with experience and confidence. He greeted her with a gentle hug, his hand resting briefly on her shoulder, a touch that brought a rush of memories and emotions she had kept buried for years. Her child waved shyly, and he bent down to offer a kind smile and a gentle word, showing a natural ease that made her heart feel lighter. They began their walk, moving through streets lined with small cafes, parks, and quiet alleys that seemed removed from the rush of everyday life. As they walked, he shared stories of places he had visited, work he had done, and experiences that hinted at a life far beyond her imagination. She listened with fascination, careful to keep her reactions measured, but inside, curiosity and admiration swirled together. She sensed that there was more to him than he had revealed, a depth and complexity that had been hinted at in small ways during their previous meetings. The path led them to a small overlook, a spot that provided a breathtaking view of the city below. The sunlight reflected off the buildings, casting long shadows and bathing the streets in golden light. She felt a quiet awe, not just at the beauty of the view, but at the feeling that this moment, this connection, was something rare and precious. He stood beside her, and for a long time they simply watched the city, the silence between them comfortable and meaningful. In that quiet, she sensed a shift, a moment where the past, present, and potential future seemed to converge. As they sat on a nearby bench, he turned to her with a seriousness that made her heart beat faster. He began to speak, carefully choosing words that conveyed thoughtfulness and sincerity. He told her about the years since they had last met, the journey he had taken, and the responsibilities he now carried. She listened intently, sensing that he was revealing more than he had before, and a part of her held its breath, waiting for the revelation that would change her understanding of him entirely. He shared the truth about his life. He had built a successful business empire, becoming a millionaire through years of hard work, smart decisions, and perseverance. He spoke not with arrogance but with humility, acknowledging the challenges and sacrifices that had led to his success. She felt a rush of emotions, surprise, awe, and a faint hesitation. The man before her, the boy she had once loved, had grown into someone extraordinary, a reality that shifted the landscape of their connection. Her mind raced with thoughts, questions, and reflections. She wondered how this revelation might change the dynamics between them, whether the gap between their worlds was too vast, and whether she could ever reconcile her own struggles with the enormity of his achievements. Yet even amidst the swirl of emotions, there was a quiet understanding that what mattered most was the bond they shared, the history, the trust, and the connection that had endured despite time and circumstance. He noticed her hesitation and reached out, taking her hand gently. His touch was steady, reassuring, and full of warmth. He told her that he valued her for who she was, not for what she had or had not achieved. His words were sincere, and she felt a release of tension, a quiet relief that the foundation of their renewed connection was trust, respect, and genuine affection. In that moment, she realized that the heart of their relationship was not defined by wealth or status, but by the authenticity and care they had for one another. They spent the afternoon exploring the overlook, talking and laughing, sharing stories and rediscovering the comfort of companionship. She noticed how attentive he was to her child, how he engaged with curiosity and kindness, creating a bond that felt natural and effortless. Her heart swelled with appreciation, not just for him but for the sense of possibility he brought into her life. The past, with its bittersweet memories, seemed to blend seamlessly with the present, creating a tapestry of connection that was both reassuring and exciting. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows and painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, they walked back slowly, savoring the final moments of the day. She felt a quiet gratitude, a recognition that life had offered her an unexpected gift, a chance to reconnect with a love she had never forgotten, to explore the possibilities of a future that felt both uncertain and full of promise. The revelation of his life as a millionaire tycoon did not intimidate her. Instead, it reinforced her admiration for his journey and the person he had become. That evening, they shared a simple dinner at a small, quiet restaurant, enjoying the comfort of conversation and the ease of companionship. She noticed how naturally he fit into her world, respecting her routines, her responsibilities, and her space, while gently sharing glimpses of his own life. The balance between familiarity and newness created a unique intimacy, one that felt authentic, grounded, and deeply human. She realized that their connection had evolved, strengthened by shared experiences, mutual respect, and the willingness to embrace the past and present together. As they walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, she felt a profound sense of hope and possibility. The struggles that had defined her life did not disappear, but they seemed lighter, more manageable, infused with the knowledge that someone who cared deeply for her was walking beside her. She reflected on the journey they had shared in these past days, the meetings, conversations, and quiet moments, and understood that life had a way of offering second chances when least expected. The encounter at the airport had been the beginning of a story that had grown into something far richer than she could have imagined. When they reached her apartment, she paused, looking up at him with a mixture of gratitude, curiosity, and affection. He smiled, understanding the emotions she carried without the need for words. They said their goodbyes with the promise of tomorrow, a promise that felt grounded, sincere, and full of potential. She carried the warmth of the day into her home, feeling a sense of calm and hope that lingered even as she tucked her child into bed. In the quiet of her apartment, after the lights were dimmed and the city outside had grown still, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. Life had been challenging, unpredictable, and often lonely, but the encounter with him reminded her that connection, love, and understanding could emerge in unexpected ways. She felt a renewed sense of strength, a belief that her life, with all its struggles and responsibilities, was still full of possibilities, hope, and moments of joy. As sleep approached, she allowed herself to dream, not just of the past or the present, but of a future filled with potential, where love, trust, and shared experiences could flourish. The man she had once loved, now a figure of success and confidence, had become more than a memory. He was a part of her present and a promise of what could come. In that quiet, reflective moment, she understood that life's surprises, no matter how improbable, had the power to transform ordinary days into extraordinary stories, and she felt ready to embrace the journey ahead, hand in hand with the one who had always held a piece of her heart. The weeks that followed were filled with a quiet rhythm of reconnection, exploration, and growing trust. She found herself thinking about him constantly, the memory of their first meeting at the airport lingering like a gentle echo that brightened her days. Life still demanded her attention, her child, work, and daily responsibilities, but now there was an undercurrent of excitement and curiosity that carried her through even the most exhausting moments. She realized that the story of her life was beginning to include something unexpected, something that brought warmth to her heart and a renewed sense of possibility. He became a steady presence in her life, offering companionship without intrusion, support without judgment, and kindness without expectation. They explored the city together on weekends, walking along quiet streets, visiting small parks, and sharing simple meals at cafes tucked away from the bustle of tourists and traffic. Each encounter allowed them to rediscover the ease of their earlier connection, while creating new memories that grounded them in the present. She noticed how seamlessly he adapted to her world, how he engaged with her child with natural affection, and how he respected the delicate balance she maintained between work, parenting, and personal time. During these visits, they talked more deeply about their pasts and the journeys that had shaped them. She shared stories of the small victories she had achieved despite overwhelming challenges, the nights she had stayed awake worrying about her child, and the moments of joy that made her sacrifices worthwhile. He listened with patience and understanding, acknowledging her resilience and strength without diminishing her experiences or offering empty platitudes. In turn, he spoke of his own path, the pressures of building a business, the mistakes he had made, and the lessons he had learned. There was a sense of mutual respect and authenticity that grew with each conversation, building a foundation that felt solid, genuine, and promising. One afternoon, as they walked along a quiet riverside path, she noticed the subtle ways in which his life differed from hers, the confidence in his stride, the careful choice of words, the ease with which he navigated social interactions. All hinted at a world she could only partially imagine. Yet she was never made to feel inferior. He treated her as an equal, valuing her opinions, respecting her routines, and appreciating her for who she was. The contrast between their worlds was striking, but instead of creating distance, it sparked fascination and admiration, a curiosity that made their time together all the more engaging and meaningful. There were quiet moments, too, when words were unnecessary. They would sit on benches overlooking the river, watch the sunlight shimmer on the water, and share a comfortable silence. In those moments, she felt a connection that transcended conversation, a sense that they understood each other in a way that went beyond spoken language. It was a rare intimacy, one that had been forged in youth and rekindled through shared experiences, trust, and genuine care. She found herself savoring these small, ordinary moments, realizing that they carried extraordinary meaning. As the weeks passed, their conversations began to explore the future. He spoke gently about his hopes, not just for his own life but for hers as well. He encouraged her to dream, to consider possibilities she had long dismissed, and to recognize her own worth beyond the immediate struggles of daily life. She began to see her own potential in a new light, inspired by his confidence in her abilities and his unwavering support. It was empowering and humbling at the same time, a reminder that connection could be a source of strength and motivation, not just companionship. Her child, too, began to respond to his presence with a quiet affection and trust. She noticed the little ways in which they interacted, shared smiles, laughter at small jokes, and a gentle sense of comfort that made her heart swell with gratitude. She realized that he had become part of their lives not as an outsider, but as someone who respected and nurtured the bonds she had worked so hard to maintain. The integration of his life with theirs felt natural and unforced, a rare and precious balance that brought her peace and reassurance. One evening, after a day spent exploring a quiet neighborhood market, they sat together on a small bench, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The colors of the sky shifted from gold to deep pink, reflecting in the still waters nearby. She felt a quiet awe, not just at the beauty around them but at the journey that had brought them to this moment. The boy she had loved, the first love of her youth, had returned not as a memory, but as a person who valued, respected, and cared for her in ways that made her feel seen, appreciated, and understood. He turned to her with a soft smile, and she noticed the gentle seriousness in his eyes. He spoke about his admiration for her resilience, her courage, and the way she balanced so many responsibilities while maintaining a kind and nurturing heart. He told her that his life was richer because of their renewed connection, that he valued the authenticity she brought into every interaction, and that he wanted to continue building a shared future, whatever shape that might take. His words carried sincerity, and she felt a quiet reassurance, a deep trust that this was not a fleeting moment, but the beginning of something enduring. In the days that followed, they continued to navigate their evolving relationship. There were challenges, of course, the complexities of her responsibilities, the adjustments to accommodate their growing closeness, and the lingering insecurities about differences in their life experiences. Yet each challenge was met with patience, understanding, and a willingness to communicate openly. They learned to support one another, to celebrate small victories, and to share moments of joy and laughter. Their bond grew stronger, rooted in shared history, mutual respect, and the willingness to embrace both the ordinary and extraordinary aspects of life together. She began to notice changes within herself as well. The hope and excitement that he brought into her life infused her daily routines with a new energy. She approached work and parenting with renewed determination. Inspired by the sense that her efforts were seen and valued, she allowed herself to dream more openly, to imagine possibilities that had once seemed out of reach. There was a quiet confidence growing within her, a sense that she was capable of embracing both the challenges and joys that life offered, especially with someone by her side who genuinely cared for her well-being and happiness. Together, they began to make plans, small but meaningful, for the future. They discussed opportunities to travel, shared experiences they wanted to have, and ways to integrate their lives while respecting the unique challenges each faced. She felt a growing sense of partnership, a realization that love and connection were not about perfection, but about support, understanding, and shared growth. The past, once a source of nostalgia and longing, had become a foundation upon which they could build a present filled with trust, joy, and possibility.